The term information security, or InfoSec, can mean a lot of things to different people, but at its core it simply means that we keep information secure by implementing something called CIA, which stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Be sure you can explain these concepts in your sleep. Confidentiality means that information can be read only by the people who should be able to get to it. Integrity ensures that the information is stored and moved around exactly as we intend, and that it cannot be modified unless we want it to be. And availability means the information is always accessible to those who should be able to get to it. Closely related to integrity is something called non-repudiation. This is achieved when someone who receives protected information cannot deny ever having received it. In fact, non-repudiation is so closely aligned with CIA that it's sometimes called CIAN, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and non-repudiation. While CIA is the most widely accepted acronym for this group of terms, leaving off non-repudiation, when you see or hear CIAN, just think of those four terms. In short, we keep sensitive information a secret through confidentiality, uncorrupted by enforcing integrity, always accessible when needed by ensuring availability, and we prevent someone from denying they access that information through non-repudiation. Now, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, or just NIST, has come up with 5 ways to implement CIA. First, you identify security needs by developing security policies and capabilities. This allows you to identify the assets you want to keep secure. Then you protect those assets, which can be software, hardware, or raw information, or data as we usually call it. This is followed by processes that detect how well those identified assets are being protected. When a threat is detected, you will respond by analyzing, containing, and eradicating the threat. And finally, you're going to need to recover resilience to the compromised systems or data if you haven't been able to control an attack. Resilience simply means that something can be stressed without breaking. To be fair, the NIST framework is only one of many approaches, but it is one of the simplest and easiest to implement. In the information security world, we also frequently encounter another acronym, AAA. This stands for Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. However, another term always rides along with AAA, Identification. So the 4. Identification occurs when a subject claims a specific identity. Authentication happens when the subject proves that identity belongs to them. Authorization is a decision on what the subject can access and how it can be used once authentication is completed. And accounting occurs when we record activities in a log, sometimes called auditing, and that log is reviewed for compliance. There's no standard acronym for this group of 4 activities in the information security universe, but we're going to refer to them as IAAA. That leaves us with 2 acronyms that pretty much covers the most fundamental concepts of information security. CIAN, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and non-repudiation, and IAAA, identification, authentication, authorization, and auditing. Now, let's bring all the terms we covered so far, CIAN, IAAA, and the NIST framework, into a single example so we can see how they all interact. Suppose we have an existing web application that performs well, but security is lacking in a lot of areas. The owners want to really harden the application against attacks, so they decide to fully implement CIAN and IAAA. Instead of starting from scratch, though, we can just use the NIST 5-function framework to ensure both CIAN and IAAA are implemented correctly. Therefore, we use a gap analysis, remember that term for later, to look where we are currently using the NIST Identify step. And during the Protect step, we will implement AAA along with identification and non-repudiation. Here's how that works. It's decided that an email address will be used when registering and signing in. The email represents identification. Obviously, a password will be required to ensure authentication. Only the owner of the email address should know the password. Once authenticated, we maintain a list of access rights tied to the email address. This is how we implement authorization. For example, some accounts are administrators and can update the system database, while others have read-only access. Now, while all of this is going on, the system is actively logging every single step the user takes. How many times a login was attempted, every page that's visited, what files were attempted to access, etc. Once each week, the IT team will meet to go over these logs to look for bad behavior. This is the accounting process. When they find a suspicious entry, they might contact the associated user and ask them why they're attempting to get into places they were not authorized for. Since there is a log showing the attempt, the user cannot deny having tried to gain access, and thereby non-repudiation has been achieved. The IT team also implements an intrusion protection system, or IPS, which is a piece of technology that sniffs network packets as they go by, looking for a hacking attempt. This implements the detect step of NIST's framework, and because the IPS also takes action to lock out offending IP addresses, it's basically a single control that implements both detection and a response. And finally, once an attack has been thwarted, the IT team has written processes on how to recover by restoring the affected systems or data. Both confidentiality and integrity are implemented using TLS, Transport Layer Security Encryption, and availability is ensured through the use of a failover architecture. More on TLS and failover architectures later. Now, in the authorization step in our example, we mentioned something called a list of access rights. An access control list, or ACL, is something that will keep coming up as we discussed more advanced subjects. At its most basic level, an ACL is simply a list of permissions associated with some type of object. Network hardware such as routers and switches typically employ ACLs with packet information, like source and destination IP addresses, port numbers, and the network protocol being used to make decisions on whether to permit or deny traffic. A firewall not only uses the same attributes when making decisions, but may also throw in additional factors such as application traffic patterns. Now, if you're not familiar with routers, switches, and firewalls, don't worry. After the next section, you will know more about them than you ever wanted to.